Hello and welcome to Hammer Time, a Hammer horror podcast, part of the Evolution of Horror Network. I'm Becky Darke, a film critic and Hammer newbie, and I'm joined by my co-host, human encyclopedia of film and TV and Hammer superfan, Kevin Lyons. Hi, Kev.
Hi, Becky. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Excellent.
We were just chatting off mic just now. It's been a beautiful friendship. We've had a good run, and we'll see how things stand at the end of this chat, because this might be it. This might be the one where we fall out.
It's such a shame. It's been such a good podcast up till now, and it's a shame we won't go any further than today, isn't it?
Sorry, listeners. I hope you haven't become too invested.
Oh, it's all very cryptic, but it will all become clear as we go along. Yeah.
It will all become clear. Yes. In this podcast, Kev and I are watching and discussing every horror film in Hammer's back catalogue. And this week we are up against another Christopher Lee monster in The Mummy from 1959.
The Mummy, the living dead, bringing terror and death across 4,000 years.
Our Hammer Time discussions are all spoilerific, and we do go into plot details and chat about endings. So if you haven't seen The Mummy yet and you would like to watch it before you listen to the episode, it's currently available to stream for free with a Prime Video subscription, or have a look at some of the websites like Just Watch, and you'll be able to find out where you can see it near you. Okay. This is it.
Just justify yourself, Darke. Justify yourself.
I know. Oh, God. We're back with another adaptation of a Universal monster. So we've had Frankenstein, obviously. We've had Dracula, that I know technically originally weren't Universal monsters. They come from novels, but they were very famously turned into monster movies by Universal. The Mummy is another one of the kind of big Universal monsters. Yep. So was this an inevitable choice for Hammer, kind of following their successes with Frankenstein and Dracula?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it came about because, I've said before that Hammer sort of jumped in and out of bed with various Hollywood studios to get funding and get distribution in the States. And with this one, Universal are on board. They do you remember the fuss they made about Curse of Frankenstein?
I do.
About not using any of the designs of the monster. We're going to get our lawyers to watch you and all the rest of it. Well, money talks, and Hollywood, it positively screams. So when they saw how much Curse of Frankenstein was making, of course they wanted some of that, and they ended up picking up Dracula for American distribution.
That's hilarious. I love that. It's so mercenary.
It is so mercenary. It's like, don't you dare rip off our copyrights. Oh, you've done a good job there. Can we have some of this?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the nature of the industry. We must never forget that the film industry is an industry. The primary goal of filmmakers is to put bums on seats and money in pockets. I'm sorry, I'm cynical, but that is the primary motivation, I'm afraid. But Universal now on board, and we're now going to, go into a co-production deal with Hammer. And they made a very generous offer to Hammer, basically, raid the vaults. Take whatever you want.
Oh my God!
Which is extraordinary.
What an about turn!
I mean, can you imagine the faces at Hammer House around the boardroom when they got that telegram? Just like,
Good
what?
Lord.
We've got the whole toy shop to play with now. It's amazing. The Daily Cinema, which was one of the trade magazines of the time, it reported that it was, quote, one of the biggest co-production deals ever entered into between a major American company and a British producing organisation.
That's incredible.
This was huge, and it shows just how respected Hammer had become.
Right.
By this point. They're little upstarts who were going to, nick their designs and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Now the darlings of Hollywood.
That is absolutely fascinating. I had no idea.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, that really is amazing.
Well, they had this sort of back catalogue, do what you want with it, and, they could have gone with a remake of Bride of Frankenstein, but they were already down their own route with Frankenstein. They could have done Dracula's daughter, but they didn't. They could have done Phantom of the Opera, because, the 1925 Phantom was made by Universal. That would come later. They decided that The Mummy would be a good bet because it's a monster film.
Yes.
And that was perfect. Curiously, they would make a Wolfman film, Curse of the Werewolf, 1961.
Banger.
Superb film. Brilliant film. I can't wait to talk about that one. Let's talk about that one instead. The Phantom of the Opera came along a year later. They never did an Invisible Man film. Probably because the special effects might have been a bit too expensive, perhaps.
Sure.
I don't know.
No
don't know.
Creature from the Black Lagoon either.
No. I mean, it'd be difficult to do that in where would that have been from? The creature from Frensham Ponds.
They could have gone back to Frensham Ponds.
The creature from Frensham Ponds. It doesn't have the same ring to it. I'm sorry. I know last week you were saying about how, there's a big part of your sort of growing up and all the rest of it, but the creature from Frensham Ponds, that sounds too friendly. That sounds like something cute popping up. So.
It does. So where does the actual kind of story originate? Because obviously, Frankenstein comes from Mary Shelley's book, Dracula comes from Bram Stoker, etc.
Sure.
So why the Mummy? Where does this come from? Or is it just sort of from a fascination with sort of Egyptology and stuff?
Well, I suspect a lot of the interest was raised by Tutankhamun.
Right.
Whose tomb was discovered several years earlier by George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, and his expedition. And, those remains, those artefacts went on a global tour.
Yeah.
And did for many, many, many decades. I can remember as a kid being brought down from Birmingham on a school trip to the British Museum to see Tutankhamun when it was on display here for a while.
Wow.
And just thinking that was the best thing I'd ever seen in my life at that point. It was absolutely amazing. It was great. So there was a lot of interest in sort of the whole Egyptological thing going on because of those remains. We have to bear in mind that a lot of this stuff was just lost for many, many years. In fact, I believe I'm right in saying the Sphinx was buried under sand.
Really?
Completely lost to sight. It was only when one of these expeditions discovered it that it came back to the surface again, literally. So Egyptology wasn't a thing until, I think, Tutankhamun.
Right.
Who fired the public imagination because this was the boy king. There were these perfectly preserved artefacts, incredible condition, and people got to see them. And so the Mummy becomes a thing in the early part of the 20th century.
So the plot of the movie, and this is, again, ripped from Letterboxd, but this we get a bit of detail with this one. It's good. Somebody's put some effort in. So, one by one, the archaeologists who discover the 4,000-year-old tomb of Princess Ananka are brutally murdered. Caris, high priest in Egypt 40 centuries ago, has been brought to life by the power of the ancient gods, and his sole purpose is to destroy those responsible for the desecration of the sacred tomb. But Isabel, wife of one of the explorers, resembles the beautiful princess, forcing the speechless and tormented monster to defy commands and abduct Isabel to an unknown fate.
Ooh.
This is why I take them from Letterboxd, because I couldn't have written that better myself.
Absolutely. Well, what becomes clear from that description as well of the plot is this is not a straight remake of the 1932 Universal film.
No.
This is actually... Jimmy Sangster was basically doing a sort of an amalgam of bits and pieces from all of the series. So you get the sort of the love story from the Mummy.
Yep.
You get bits and pieces from the Mummy's Hand, the Mummy's Tomb, the Mummy's Ghost, the Mummy's Curse, the Mummy's Bad Weekend, the Mummy's Bad Hair Day. All the rest of the stuff that they did. It's basically they were just the Mummies. What else can we put on the end of it to make this film? So they did. It's a kind of greatest hits package for the Universal films. I think this one, which works better. I quite like the Universal Mummy, but it is not a Mummy film that, as I would think of it.
Okay, interesting. I'm not sure that I've seen it.
It's interesting because Boris Karloff plays the Mummy, but he's not in bandages except for a few minutes at the beginning of the film. Now, he's quite a chatty Mummy.
Yeah, I'm sure I haven't seen it. I think it's the only one of the big Universal sort of original monster crew that I haven't seen. I think I've seen all of the others.
It's well worth a look. Honestly, it's got one of the greatest lines in cinema history where one of the expedition members sees the Mummy come to life and walk out of a room and he's driven insane by the sight. And when his colleagues come rushing in, he just gibbers. He went for a little walk.
Oh!
And it's really sort of unsettling and creepy.
Oh, that is chilling.
Go and find a copy. Watch it. I think you would love it. But it's a very different film to this one.
Okay. And
which may be a selling point for you, I don't know.
I am a fan, however, of the 90s Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz vehicle, as I think many people are, because it's an incredible movie. I also really like the second one. For many people of my generation, it turned us all bisexual because of all of the beautiful people in it. Yes. And what you do really get in that is what you get in the Hammer Mummy, this idea of, so in the Hammer one, Isabel and Princess Ananka being sort of doppelgangers of each other, and this sort of distracting / becoming the mummy's kind of main focus, because he gets confused and, he thinks that Isabel is his ex-lover. Is that something that is from the Universal ones, Kev?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a universal story, isn't it? It's kind of been around in horror films for a very, very long time. You'll see it start to creep into Dracula films.
Well, Bram Stoker's Dracula, the
Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. That idea of a lost or unrequited love is actually quite a sort of a powerful story, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting way of making the monster seem less monstrous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Underneath it all, it's suffering the same that we've all suffered. We've all had an unrequited love. Mm-hmm. We've all lost the love of our lives. This happens to us all. And so we can identify with the monster a bit more. I think in Bram Stoker's Dracula, they went over the top. I don't want my Dracula sobbing all the time. Thank you very much. But, in the Mummy films, I think it works really well. And, I do like that Brendan Fraser film. I like the first one. The others, I can take them or leave them. But I do like that first one. I think it's a really interesting film. It's Indiana Jones meets the Mummy.
Yeah, basically.
And I think, on those terms, I think it's a great film. There's loads of fun.
Yeah.
Loads of fun.
Absolutely. And it essentially gave us Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as a movie star as well, which we've got to thank for.
And you know what? I will stick up for Dwayne Johnson. I like the guy. I think he's...
I wasn't being facetious. I think he's great.
I love him. He's not the world's greatest actor, and he would never claim to be, but he's a really good film star.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
There's a difference. We've talked about that before. There's a difference between film star and great actor. And I think he's a really good film star, and I love him. So yes, thank you, The Mummy 1999, for giving us Dwayne Johnson.
I know that he isn't technically in that one, but the series, all of this, it's fine.
The series, he will turn up in the
exactly. So I would like, if you don't mind, to get the more awkward stuff addressed first, because then we can just move on, Kev.
Absolutely.
So,
and I know where you're going.
Yeah.
I know where you're going.
This is, and it's something that we sort of discussed a little bit when we were talking about The Abominable Snowman a couple of weeks ago.
That's right.
But this is an example of a late 50s film where the choice was made to not only brown up some of the actors, but specifically a very famous actor and somebody who has been appearing in Hammer films that we've been watching, somebody who was definitely white and has been extremely prominent, Christopher Lee, and they get him to play not only the monster mummy, but during the film you get these kind of flashbacks told through usually the sort of archaeologists telling these stories.
Yes.
And you get to look back at kind of the origin of the mummy and the princess and the legend and all of this stuff. And when you do the flashback, Christopher Lee plays the high priest, Karis. And they have put dark makeup on his skin to make him look Egyptian, North African. Now, as always with these discussions, we need to look at it within the context of the era. But I think, it's always an interesting discussion to have. And I just want to sort of ask you kind of what we think about it now. And so, for example, could different decisions have been made? Like, did we need the flashbacks, for example? That kind of thing. Like, what do we think about these sorts of choices that were made to especially brown up like such a prominent actor?
First thing to say is it's not the most egregious example of this that Christopher Lee will be enforced, having forced upon him, the Nun Hammer Fu Manchu films. Yeah, I mean, I quite like the films, but they're very uncomfortable. They're sort of being, they put these sort of epicanthic folds on him to make him look
I'd forgotten about
Chinese,
that.
and he doesn't, Yeah, so it's not the worst example of it, which is not to excuse it at all, but we have to, again, as with Abominable Snowman, we have to understand the times.
Absolutely.
How many Middle Eastern actors were there in Britain at that time to play those parts? Did they need to brown him up at all?
Well,
would most British people in 1959 have really known what Egyptians looked like?
This is it. And also, because it is ancient Egypt, he has the kind of high priest makeup on. So he's got the very elaborate kind of eye makeup over his brows. Yeah. He's got the sort of eyeliner on that comes all the way out. I think there's kind of blue and gold and black. And you sort of think, like, especially even with the cosmetic makeup of being a high priest, would that not have sold it,
He was an exotic-looking chap anyway. He had that exoticism about him, Christopher Lee. And, when we were watching those big biblical epics, we didn't stop and think, that's not what Romans looked like. They would be much more suntanned than that because they came from, the Mediterranean and all the rest. We just accepted it. We just accepted Richard Burton as a Roman centurion or whatever he was playing. But so I do wonder if perhaps they could have just not bothered with it.
Yeah.
But having said that, I think the flashback is far too long. I'm going to say that. The flashback goes on forever and it needed to be trimmed. But it serves two purposes, really. One, it gives us this sort of backstory to Karis, which is quite important. The idea that he's not just a monster, he's a guy who fell in love with the wrong person.
Yeah.
So it adds the tragedy to it, and I think we needed to see that.
Yeah.
It also gives Christopher Lee a chance to be seen and heard.
Yeah, I know.
Which, I'm sure that he would have been delighted with the fact that at least I get this sort of, 5-minute bit in the middle of the film where they can actually see me, even if I am browned up. But again, back then, I'm not excusing it at all. If they did this in a film now, we'd all be quite rightly appalled by it. But back then, it was quite common practice.
Yeah, I know.
And no one was offended by it. No one was shocked by it. It's only when... I think what happened was, in the 60s, we started travelling. The working class started to travel. We went on package holidays abroad.
Yeah.
And then we started encountering these people who, sort of... Hang on a minute, we've heard about these strange chaps that came over on the Windrush and they were living in parts of London, but we never saw one. We don't know about that. Now you're going abroad and seeing all these cultures and seeing all these people and realising there's some really amazing stuff out there to be found. Some really interesting people. And over time, I think attitudes changed. People weren't going to accept people blacking up. Although that said, I mean, it took a very long time. I remember recently rewatching Monty Python's Flying Circus and being shocked at the amount of blackface in some of the episodes.
They were blacking up in Little Britain.
Yes, I know.
A handful, a relative handful of years ago.
Yeah. So, and, so the excuse, that's a comedy, doesn't wash.
No.
Because it's not funny.
No.
It may have been funny when the black and white minstrels were on telly as a kid. I always found them hilarious because I didn't understand the context. I didn't understand what's going on. And the times were such that these... sort of idiots singing these terrible songs, sort of in dreadful makeup would turn up on my television once a week. It just seemed funny to me. Nowadays, the very thought of black and white minstrels just turns my stomach.
Yeah.
How the hell did we actually allow this on mainstream television, for God's sake? It's so openly racist. But it is the times. We become... Have I said this before? I can't remember. I'll say it again. We're becoming better at understanding differences across geography. That we're sort of understanding that people in different parts of the world may have been brought up differently, may have different beliefs. There are still headbangers out there. Most of them seem to be on Twitter, I'm afraid. But they are out there still to, don't like him, don't like him, all the rest of it. But we are becoming better at that, I think, as a whole, as a society. Generally, I think people are more interested in other cultures and people from those cultures. And what we're not so good at is becoming more understanding of cultures across time.
This is such an interesting point. Yeah, you haven't said this before, Kev. So,
I haven't.
Yeah.
Okay, it's something that I do tend to harp on about. That this was 70 years ago. This film. Mm-hmm. I would hope we've changed in 70 years, and I can absolutely guarantee you, I won't be here for this, but some of you will be. In 70 years' time, people will be looking back at the films that are being made today that we're holding in high regard and thinking, what the hell were they thinking doing that?
Yeah.
It will happen because attitudes change. Society constantly is in constant flux. Mm-hmm. It's always changing. And we're getting better at some things, and we're just a little bit slower at understanding that things were different in the past. The past is a different country. Mm-hmm. And all of that stuff. And I was going to say, as Doctor Who once said, but I think actually he was misquoting someone else.
Oh.
I think it's actually quite a well-known. The past is a foreign country. But anyway, she said all my cultural references, as we know from this podcast and others, come from Doctor Who. There you go, shoehorned it in. I don't think I did it last week, but I did this week. But we are getting better at understanding some things, but I think we don't make allowances for the fact that 70 years ago people were different, society was different, the world was different. Mm-hmm. It's not right. It does make us feel awkward today, and I think that's why we lash out at it, to be honest, because it makes us feel awkward. But it was a product of a culture at that time, a culture which has since changed, and to get the most from these films, I think we have to... I'm finding people now looking down on films from the 1980s, which seems to me to be incredibly new. But they're looking down on them because attitudes and times have changed. Absolutely.
I mean, I've just been on the Empire podcast doing the spoiler special. So it's one of their sort of subscription podcasts.
Sure.
Their spoiler special about John Hughes films.
Yes.
And I mean, 16 Candles has got some atrocious stuff in it.
Back then, we didn't blink an eye.
No.
It was because of the society we lived in, it just felt okay. Mm-hmm. We learn, as a society and as a species, we are constantly learning that those things aren't okay. But I can't bring it in myself to sort of wag my finger at Hammer.
No.
And say, you naughty, naughty, terrible people, because at that time they didn't know any difference. This was what was acceptable.
Well, absolutely. And I don't think either of us is interested in the slightest in wagging our fingers at anything. I just think,
absolutely.
What we're trying to do with the podcast, obviously, is look at these films all these years later and celebrate them
Indeed.
within the context of watching them from 2025. And I just think it would be odd to not mention it, you know?
Oh, of course, no. It's absolutely right to bring it up, and younger viewers will find it more difficult than old farts like me who grew up in a time when it was, and I get that.
I'm really hoping that some of our listeners are people who haven't, seen...
Sure.
Hammer films before. In fact, I know that there are people who are watching these films for the first time and sort of coming on this journey with us. And this wasn't a first watch for me. Yeah. I had seen The Mummy before, and so I knew to expect it. But I just think it's... for people who are watching it for the first time within the context of the way movies are made now,
yes.
And the way that, as you say, exactly, Kev, society changes, the way films are made changes, people's attitude changes, what is kind of acceptable now wasn't acceptable then, won't be acceptable in 50 years, all of this
Absolutely.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, of course.
It's just part of the overall conversation, isn't it?
It is. It's all part of it. It's a good point that needs to be made. We will need to make it again in some of the 60s films where we will touch on those sort of things again. But it's a really difficult one to talk about without sounding like you're trying to apologise for it.
I think you've done a superb job, so thank you.
Good, in which case, let's move on. We don't need to talk about it again at this point. But
we're not moving on too far, because we are still on the subject of the great Christopher Lee. So we've got him back as the monster in this film.
Yes.
Obviously, we've seen him before as Frankenstein's creature. We've seen him as the very enigmatic Dracula. And it's a slightly jarring shift back, I think, after Dracula, to him kind of being a bit more of a well, as you say, those flashbacks are really his only opportunity to say anything, because the mummy itself is essentially like a mute automaton, isn't it?
It is.
And Dracula was very erudite, and he really sort of had such an opportunity to stretch his incredible vocal skills and line deliveries and stuff. So how do we feel about Christopher Lee's Mummy and this kind of return, I suppose, more to his Frankenstein's creature-style monster rather than the Dracula-style monster?
Well, it's even more jarring as well, I think, coming on the heels of Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yeah.
Which is his most vocal film. Mm-hmm. He doesn't say a lot in Dracula.
No.
He says nothing in Curse of Frankenstein.
No.
Then he gets these sort of big speaking parts in Hound of the Baskervilles where, that voice, amazing voice, he gets to use it a lot. Then suddenly he's back under wraps playing,
literally.
a mute killing machine. But he would never do this again for Hammer or for anybody, I don't think. This would be the last time this would happen. So maybe he just felt he owed them one. And maybe as well, he was just thinking, well, I played the Frankenstein monster, I played Dracula, I may as well do the Mummy while I'm here. Just complete the trio, But I think the Mummy that he plays is amazing.
Yeah.
I have to say, I think, you may disagree with this because of your love for the 1999 films, but I think this may be the best screen Mummy ever. This is the Mummy as the Terminator. This relentless, unstoppable killing machine.
That is right.
Do you remember in The Terminator when Kyle Reese says, "It will not stop"?
Yep.
That's what we've got here. They shoot it in the back. Branning, the Peter Cushing character, shoots it in the back. He skewers it on a spike. Mm-hmm. It just keeps going. It's got this single-minded mission that it's on. Mm-hmm. And, it's also incredibly strong. It strangles men with one hand.
Yeah.
It just pins them down, chokes the life out of them. It's a scary old monster, I think. The way sort of... one of the things I loved about... Sorry, this may sound like a digression, but I will get back to it. One of the things I loved about Casino Royale, the first Daniel Craig film...
Wow. There were many films that I thought you might... Casino Royale was not the one that I was expecting to come up. Please carry on.
Bear with me on this one. I'll get back to it. There's a wonderful scene near the beginning of Casino Royale where Bond is chasing the bad guy who's doing parkour to get away from it. And he, the bad guy's very elegant, sleeping around, all the rest of it. Bond, because he is what M calls a blunt instrument, literally runs through a wall to get at him, because he just goes straight through. There's a little bit of that in this Mummy.
Uh-huh.
See, I told you we'd get back to it. That was great. He bursts through a door.
Takes it off the hinges, like a double door, just off the hinges.
Which actually caused some injury to poor old Christopher Lee. The door was accidentally locked.
No, oh God.
It was a prop door, but they locked it, and he went marching into it and damaged his shoulder. So he suffered for his art on this film, I have to say. As well as that, he sort of did his backing, carrying on Yvonne Furneaux, the female lead, at the end of the film when he's carrying her back into the swamp. There's in the swamp there were lots of machinery to create the bubbles, and he grazed his shins. Ooh. This man suffered for his art, I'll have you know. And but I think he makes a really good Mummy because he's relentless, he's unstoppable, he's terrifying. And because they haven't got him in traditional sort of flowing bandages, we still get the Christopher Lee physique.
Yeah.
So we get the very tall, very toned body.
Yeah.
There's some terrific shots of him towering over George Pastel, who plays the Egyptian guy who's sort of leading this mission of revenge.
Yeah.
Towering over him.
Am I right in thinking there was even some kind of forced perspective being used in a couple of the shots?
It's hard to tell, isn't it? Because he was so tall and so impressive and so imposing.
Yeah.
I think they might have put the camera lower down a little bit just to exaggerate that even more. But
there was one shot specifically where it really looked like they were kind of using a clever sort of foreground, background kind of placing to really accentuate that difference.
Sure. Well, that's what they were trying to do with this. They were trying to make this Mummy a proper monster. He wasn't the lumbering monster that we saw in the Universal sequels. Those were the kind of equivalents of the George Romero zombies. This one is the equivalent of the 28 Days later infected and later fast-moving zombies. He gets around. He's got to turn a speed when he gets going. And the fact that he's so strong and so physically imposing, I think he's terrifying. I really do.
I think Terminator is a really good comparison, actually. But what the Mummy does have, and this is something that I think you were alluding to, Kev, when you were talking about the kind of the love story element with Princess Ananka, is that when the Mummy sees Isabel and sort of thinks, that this is his long-lost love.
Sure.
He suddenly becomes pretty sympathetic.
Oh, yes.
And again, Christopher Lee is having to act through pretty much an entire body's worth of sort of bandages and bodysuit.
Yeah.
You can just see his eyes.
Yeah.
And his gestures. And yet, all of a sudden, you can see this switch in the monster, going from that kind of Terminator-esque, absolutely, focused kind of automaton, to this much more aware, human. That he's. There's a brilliant bit when I think the character's name is Bey Mehmet is the Egyptian guy.
Mehmet Bey.
So Mehmet says to him something like, like, get back in your box, I'll we'll get you out again in the morning or something. And there's this look of, well, I don't want to do that because my girlfriend's out there. I want to go and be with her. And there's this, and obviously it's all just done by the movement of Lee's eyes. And at that point I thought, he has nailed this, because all of a sudden I'm feeling empathy for... Yeah,
exactly. The scene that gets me in the same way is right near the end where he's attacking Branning, going to kill him, and Isabel rushes in and distracts him. And he shouts at her, let your hair down.
Let your hair down, that's right.
Lets her hair down. And she kind of transforms before our very eyes into an anchor. And then it cuts to Caris, and just the look in Lee's eyes. That's all he's got. So close up on his eyes. It is that look of, it's you. I found you.
Yeah.
The look of real, genuine love in those eyes from a monster.
Yeah.
And this again is the genius of Hammer, and particularly the genius of Christopher Lee. Like you say, at that point, both of those points, we suddenly see the human being underneath the bandages.
Exactly that.
And we realise that this is a man who, as I said about the flashback, his only crime was to fall in love with the wrong person. Who of us hasn't done that?
Yeah.
Who of us hadn't fallen in love with the wrong person? We didn't all end up with our tongues lopped out and being mummified, but we've all been there. We all understand that feeling. So when we see him reunited with the love of his life and his afterlife, it's a really touching moment. It's actually rather beautiful.
It is touching, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've got Roy Ashton back on makeup duty. We spoke spoke about him last week with Hound of the Baskervilles after he had taken over from Phil Leakey after his contract wasn't renewed and he didn't want to be a freelancer, so off he went. And Roy Ashton does a superb job here, doesn't he? Isn't this like... He really does.
This mummy looks like it's been mouldering away for centuries.
Honestly, when he first emerges from the bog that his box has been unceremoniously thrown into off the back of a little wagon.
Right,
and Mehmet sort of does an incantation, brings the mummy back to life. The mummy rises from out of this bog. And I mean, I couldn't help thinking, Kev, of zombie flesh eaters. I thought that he just looked so modern, almost. I know that's a silly thing to say about zombie flesh eaters, which was made in the 70s, and we're now in 2025. But it just looked so good and so
I get it,
scary. And as he comes out, like, I don't know what they have covered him with, but it looks like mud and goo and God knows what that they have covered him head to toe in. I thought it was so effective.
It's a superb scene. I have to tell you at this point, that's not Christopher Lee.
Oh.
That's a stuntman called Eddie Powell.
All right.
And we have Roy Ashton to thank for the presence of Eddie Powell. Roy Ashton spotted him one day and thought, this guy, 6'6", athletically built, he's got that nose. Is that Christopher Lee over there? And he wasn't. He was Eddie Powell, who has a startling resemblance to Christopher Lee. And we're going to put a photograph up, aren't we? We're going to put a photograph of Eddie Powell up when this episode goes out, and you'll be on social media, and you'll be able to see exactly what we're talking about. They're almost like brothers. And he was the one that did the gunshot wounds when he's been shot in the back. And he did all the scenes of the mummy going in and out of the bog, which was shot on the water tank at Bray Studios. And in my mind's eye, I can see Christopher Lee going up to Roy Ashton afterwards and saying, I want to kiss you, man. You have saved me from a night in the water tank, being covered head to toe in God knows what that crap was that they covered him in. Eddie can do the job instead. And Eddie did the job a lot because he became Christopher Lee's pretty much permanent stuntman after this. Certainly on the Hammer films, he was stunt doubling him right the way through to the Devil a Daughter at the very end of this run of films. He did it for other films as well, for other companies, I think, but certainly for Hammer. And yeah, it's amazing. One of those little accidents, one of those little sort of quirks of fate that Hammer...
One of these little Hammer miracles.
Little Hammer miracles that Roy Ashton just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
I mean, it's just incredible because as we've said, a number of times now on the podcast, Christopher Lee is such an individual-looking guy, right? He's so striking, he's so tall. And for not only for there to be a guy who looks... Because I've just looked him up, and I'm telling you, it is remarkable how
it is, isn't it?
Similar Eddie Powell looks. But not only for this guy to, just be out there and be a stunt performer anyway, but for... Ashton to just sort of stumble across him while they're making the film.
For him to be there.
Absolutely incredible.
In 1959, there just happened to be a stuntman that looked like Christopher Lee. It is one of those great things. You just think Hammer were so lucky sometimes. They worked very hard to achieve their fame, but sometimes there was a little bit of luck involved.
Well, and as you say, Christopher Lee was pretty lucky because it meant that he didn't have to go down into God knows what.
He would have done it because he was a professional, but I bet when they got Eddie Powell in, he just prayed to whatever God he believed in. He's just like, thank you. I don't have to go and do that.
Okay, so we've done Christopher Lee, and once again, here is our friend Peter Cushing.
Oh, yes.
Back, following Van Helsing, Baron Frankenstein, and Sherlock Holmes, these huge characters. And here he is playing the archaeologist, John Banning. So how do we find Cushing's performance in this, Kev? I mean, obviously, I think it probably goes without saying that Cushing is always incredible, so we don't need to linger too long on just how good he is as an actor. But what do we kind of think of his character here, and like specifically kind of what he brings to the role?
I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm just going to say these words. Peter Cushing is amazing in this. There we go. We can now edit that and put that into every one of the films that we do.
Love it.
Because he just is. Yeah, it's not much of a character, though.
It's not, right? It's much more low-key.
Yeah, he's laid up with an injury in bed for ages. Later on, he's very much playing second fiddle to the mummy. I think, this is definitely Christopher Lee's film. This is definitely for Lee to shine, even though we don't see him very much.
Definitely.
But I think, he still gives it his all. He still gives it an extraordinary performance. It's just... When we're thinking of the great pantheon of Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing creations for Hammer, John Banning is not the one that springs to mind.
No.
We don't tend to think of him. We think of Frankenstein, we think of Dracula, we think of Holmes, we think of a few others that are coming up, but we don't think of John Banning. He's a bit of
I agree.
a bland character, invested with some interest by Peter Cushing. And in fact, I think Peter Cushing understood some of the limitations of the character because once again he came up with a suggestion. He said many years later that it was his idea to have Banning skewering the mummy on a spear.
Oh, yeah.
He'd been partly inspired by the poster image, which is really striking, this gigantic mummy with a hole in its stomach.
That's right, and it's like a sort of shaft of light or something coming through, isn't it? Yeah.
And he knew they weren't going to get that in the film, but he wanted something along those lines. So he said, why don't I just skewer it with this spear? A bit like, at the end of Dracula when he was a bit fed up of whipping out crucifixes. I think he was just a bit...
What did he say? I'm starting to look like a crucifix salesman.
That's right, travelling crucifix salesman, yeah. Brilliant. But I think here was the same problem. I think he was feeling a little bit, this is a bit of a nothing character, really. I want to do something to liven him up a bit. I know, he'll get this spear out and skewer him.
It's a great moment.
It is a great moment. And when it comes to the physicality, eventually they get these two fantastic fights with Caris. And they really go at each other.
They do.
Liam Cushing, I think their friendship has been overplayed a little bit over the years. They weren't like, sort of best mates going down the pub on a Saturday night. But they had a great deal of love and respect for each other. But they didn't half get into fights with each other on the set and knock each other about. It's like, wow, this is absolutely electrifying, the fight scenes in this. Really quite brutal.
Yeah, they are. They feel sort of tactile and,
yes,
kinetic. Like they're really, really good. I've noticed that very, very distinctly. How you
feel like one of them's going to get hurt.
You do. You absolutely do.
Yeah.
Like it's really physical stuff. Them sort of throwing each other around. Maybe that's the secret to a healthy working relationship. Is now and again just have a bit of a play fight. And stop yourself coming to actual blows.
And then go down the studio bar and make up, over a couple of schnifters, after filming was finished. Yes, absolutely. But no, they are great, really, because they're both very physical actors. We've talked about this before, about their sheer physicality. And we do get to see a lot of that here. Christopher Lee bursting through doors and fighting his way through windows in insane asylums and all the rest of it.
Oh, my God, I love
really
that.
Physical part. Cushing doesn't get quite so much to do, but he did do a bit of dashing about, but not quite as much as we're used to from him.
No, that's right.
So it's kind of... I'm not going to say anything bad about Peter Cushing, unless we're talking about the Doctor Who movies of the 1960s. But I'm not going to say anything bad about Peter Cushing in the Hammer films. I think he was magnificent in all of them. But this is one of his lesser roles, I think.
Yeah, agreed. So elsewhere in the cast of kind of characters and performers, you've already mentioned her, Kev. We've got Yvonne Furneaux as Isabel and the Princess Ananka. So she's got this sort of dual role.
That's right.
I don't think there is... Well, firstly, she's pretty much the only woman in the entire film.
That's right, yes.
Because usually you get, like, a main lady who is...
That's right,
sort of a love interest or maybe a colleague or both or, and then you get, there might be another couple of sort of ancillary female characters. So you'll get a barmaid or
that's right,
or Rosie.
Or it's
been a couple of weeks since
Rosie,
I've been allowed to, since I've had an opportunity to mention Rosie. So here she is.
I'm just thinking, there should have been a spin-off film where Rosie adopts Colonel, the dog that played the Hound of the Baskervilles.
How
good would that have been?
I love that.
We're wandering off into realms of fantasy again now, but somebody out there write a story where, Rosie adopts a huge, great dog.
Yeah, come on, fanfic people. Let's make this happen.
We can do this.
Or, there is a sort of housekeeper or something. But in this film, you've basically just got Yvonne Furneaux. And the fact that she plays two characters doesn't count.
No.
You get one female character. And even then, I found, especially off the backs of, I think her name was Helen, the wife in The Abominable Snowman.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And the point is she's not just the wife, is she? She's an extremely capable scientist and heroine.
Yeah.
Or Mina in Dracula. A lot of the other women that we have encountered have had a certain get up and go about
That's right,
them.
yeah.
In this, Isabel, really, she doesn't have a huge amount to do. She doesn't have a lot of agency. Even when she's kind of protesting against her husband banning,
sure,
sort of going off on his own. Like she's just sort of summarily told to sort of go to bed and lock herself in her room. Then she does a bit of fainting, and it's all a little bit underwhelming.
It is.
And then it's as Princess Ananka, she's pretty much just dead.
That's right.
She just lies there
basically, doesn't she? Yeah,
literally it. But saying all of that, I think that Furno is very good at what she does, but I don't think she's got a lot to play with.
I think the problem is that, Jimmy Sangster has been criticised a lot for those early films that he wrote not having the best parts for women. And I've said this before, that he did try to compensate later on when he started writing his psychological horrors, which were all female-centric.
Yeah.
So he learned from that thing. But I think back then, he was quite young in the late 1950s. I wonder how much experience he'd had around women, to be fair. But he didn't really seem to know what to do with his female characters some of the time. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We're going to see much better female characters coming up in the next few films, I think.
I suppose the reason it stood out to me is because we've seen such better female characters before, and even from Sangster. I was relatively enthusiastic about Elizabeth in Frankenstein. So, I absolutely understand that it's something that, not only has he been criticised elsewhere for, and it isn't exactly a hot take from me, but also that it's something that he was aware of himself. And he took real strides. But I don't know. Like, this is the first one, the first female character that we've come across so far in all our chats that I've thought, God, this is dire.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I love Yvonne Furno. I think, like you say, she does a really good job with a very thin character.
With what she's got, yeah.
And she goes on to be absolutely brilliant playing Catherine Deneuve's sister in Roman Polanski's Repulsion. So she's very clearly a very capable actress, but I don't think she was given a very interesting part to play.
No.
It almost feels a little bit tokenistic, like we've got to have a woman in here for the women in the audience.
It does feel like that.
I think she plays Ananka and the sort of, the reincarnation of Ananka, but they could have written that part differently, perhaps, and just, He finds Ananka by chance later in the film, where we don't know who she is, and that's a smaller role, but maybe more impressive. I don't know. It just feels a little bit. Yeah, it is the weakest link in the film for me.
Yeah,
Isabel. Yeah. She's very forgettable.
Yeah.
Which is staggering when you see pictures of Yvonne Furno and just how gorgeous she was. How could you forget that? But you do. You do. She was a striking-looking woman, and yet somehow you tend to forget she's in this film.
Hello everyone, it's producer Mike Muncer here from the Evolution of Horror Network, just interrupting this week's episode momentarily to plug another podcast we've got in the EOH network, Carry On Up the Podcast. If you're a fan of Hammer Horror and this chronological journey through a British film series from the 1950s to the 1970s, then why not seek out its comedy sister podcast, Carry On Up the Podcast, in which me and comedian and television presenter Susan Kalman are working our way through every single Carry On film, from 1958's Carry On Sergeant all the way through to 1978's Carry On Emmanuel, and then of course 1992's attempt at a revival with Carry On Columbus. We will be discussing the good, the bad, and the hideously ugly entries in that franchise. And this week we got to discuss Carry On's spin on Hammer horror and gothic horror more generally, with Carry On Screaming. So this seems like a perfect time, if you're a Hammer fan, to dip into Carry On Up the Podcast. The first 13 episodes are available to listen to right now. Find Carry On Up the Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, so not a lot of great stuff going on for the women, but we've got some really interesting characters and performances elsewhere from the blokes, because my personal favourite, thanks for asking, is Felix Aylmer as the dad. Oh my God, I thought this guy was incredible. And you don't get to see a lot of him, but every time he was on screen, I was like, this guy is great.
He makes a real impact, doesn't he? He's he won great acclaim when he played the Archbishop of Canterbury in Henry V in 1944. So he'd been around for a while, doing really good quality work. Bit of a regular in those big costume dramas and epics of the time. So he seemed a natural fit for Hammer.
Do you know, I'm pretty sure I've seen him in stuff because he looks very familiar.
He's one of those faces, and Hammer films are full of these, one of those faces where you sit there and goes, I know him. Where do I know him from? Where do I know her? Where have I seen her before?
Yeah.
You know, and it happens all the time in Hammer because, as I keep on saying about these things, they got their pick of the very best.
Yeah.
Hammer films were cast to the hills by some of the best character actors this country had to offer. Felix Aylmer is a great example. He's hardly in it, but he's much more memorable than Isabel, frankly.
Oh, much more. And he doesn't get anywhere near as much the same sort of screen time.
He doesn't, no.
So he's, he plays at the beginning of the film this very sort of passionate and enthusiastic archaeologist. He's the head of this sort of expedition, I suppose, to unearth the tomb of Ananka. He is John Banning's father, so you've got that kind of relationship there. There's this whole thing about John having hurt his leg, and there's John's sort of very focused on the job at hand and doesn't want to go to hospital because he doesn't want to leave the site. He's broken his leg.
That's right, yeah.
His uncle Joseph, who we'll come on to talk about in a moment, played by Raymond Huntley, is kind of saying, he needs to go and get it set properly, and Dad is kind of being a little bit non-committal, and I think he's distracted by the fact that they are on the verge of uncovering this tomb that they have been looking for all these years. And so you get Felix Aylmer as this very sort of convincing older gentleman who has probably come from money because he's over there sort of pursuing this sort of quite singular sort of expedition and hobby, really.
Yes.
But then he obviously sees the mummy, and this sort of harks back to what you were saying before, Kev, about the Universal film, because he basically goes mad, right?
That's right, yeah.
They don't know what's happened to him, but we go then a few years later over to Britain, and he is in a kind of an asylum for the sort of mentally unwell, I think it's called.
Yes.
Or a nursing home for the mentally unwell. And there is this beautiful moment when he has come out of this sort of catatonic state, and John comes to visit him for the first time that he's been able to speak to his father for about 3 years. And the transformation that Felix Aylmer manages to get across is incredible. He's this shrunken man, and not physically, but in spirit, and you can just
broken,
see that.
Isn't he?
Yeah, he's
been broken. Yeah.
It's an amazing performance.
It is superb, and Felix Aylmer was so good at that sort of thing. He's just another brilliant British actor. Hammer was so lucky to get these people. They really were.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, we've got Raymond Huntley as Uncle Joseph.
Now, he's one of my favourites, Raymond Huntley. Yeah. Always really good in the kind of supercilious roles. He does get we're going to talk about this line later on. He gets quite an important line when he first meets Mehmet Bey. It's to do with, should we be there taking their relics from them? But it's a very good line, very well delivered. But he's really good in this, and a little bit of trivia for you, because I know you like your trivia, Becky.
Oh, I do.
He played none other than Dracula in the original London stage run of the stage play. It gets better. As I understand it, he'd been offered the part on Broadway, but he decided he didn't want to go to Broadway, so they had to recast it. And the producers had to bring in some, at that point, unknown Hungarian actor, chap by the name of Bela Lugosi. Whatever happened to him? Whatever happened to him? So, the fact that Raymond Huntley turned down the Broadway show gave them Bela Lugosi. The fact that he was Dracula on Broadway was what got him the part in the film. So we have Raymond Huntley to thank for that. I'm going to go with that story, and I'm sticking with it.
That is amazing.
Isn't that incredible?
I love that.
It's great. So,
incredible trivia.
He had some track record with our genre. And here he is now with the company that had just revived Dracula and revived the Gothic horror.
Yeah, and was working for the first time with Universal.
That's right.
Who obviously made the first Dracula film. This is incredible.
This is amazing, isn't it? Isn't it wonderful? The way all these things all lock together. I love all this. This is fantastic.
I love it.
And this is only Hammer horror, but he did do a couple of other films. He did the Last Page in 1952. He did the Sounds of the Desert in 1960 and the sitcom spin-off That's Your Funeral in 1973. I wish he'd done more for Hammer. I like him.
Yeah, he's good.
He's one of those great sort of comforting presences when you see him around.
Yeah.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I really like him as well. And he and Felix Elmer actually have a really nice on-screen chemistry, I think.
They do.
You can believe them as brothers. I think you believe Joseph, Uncle Joseph, and Stephen Banning the father, and John Banning, played by Peter Cushing, as this kind of sort of family unit. They've got really good chemistry together. I think it works.
They have, yeah. They're terrific.
Then we've got Eddie Byrne as Inspector Mulrooney, who is an Irish actor, and I thought he was quite a breath of fresh air. Actually, I was starting to get a little bit, yeah, all right, get on with it. And then he comes in as this. It's basically after Uncle Joseph has been killed by the mummy, and he's there to investigate the murder, because the mummy is on an absolute killing spree. As you say, he's like the Terminator. He will not be deterred.
He is.
He breaks into the nursing home where Stephen Banning is sort of residing, and strangles him to death in an incredible sequence when he breaks through the window.
That's amazing, isn't it? Yes.
And then he breaks through the doors and comes and attacks poor Uncle Joseph as well. And then we get Eddie Byrne coming in as the copper, basically, who is here to not only investigate the deaths, but sort of act as a bit of a sort of cynic / naysayer about all of the supernatural goings on. So talk to me about Eddie Byrne, Kev.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's great in this. A lot of people don't like this role. A lot of people think that he's kind of a bit disposable. But I don't think that's true at all. I think he's quite necessary. He's not quite the comic relief.
No.
We're going to come to them in a moment. But he is, like you say, a lighter character, taking a slightly different view of the proceedings. He's the voice of the audience in some ways.
Absolutely that.
This is all absurd. How can this be, it can't be happening. We don't have mummies roaming around the home counties. Or indeed, are they roaming around Ireland? Because we've got his accent and several other fake Irish accents in this film. When I first saw it, I did think it was set in Ireland. It isn't. It's set in the home counties. But I was thrown for a few minutes when I first saw the film years ago. But I think he's very good in this. He's, again, one of those incredibly personable actors.
Yeah.
Who turns up, never did a kind of leading role as such. He was never a big star. He's one of those guys who would turn up on the Sunday afternoon film, back in the day when they showed old British films on Sunday afternoons on TV, and you go, I know him. I saw him 3 weeks ago in such and such. What's his name? I don't know, but I know his face. And he's one of those guys.
Yeah.
Later on you get into all this stuff, you start learning names, but a very, very comforting presence. And I think he's rather good in this film.
Yeah,
to be
I liked
perfectly
him.
honest. I think he's very good. And all those naysayers, it's not a disposable role. He does play a part.
I don't think so at all. I think, as you say, I think he's necessary.
Yeah, he's the viewpoint for us. He's the sort of the voice. Yeah. He's that guy in John Carpenter's The Thing who reacts when the head walks out the door. He's that guy. He's not using the same language as that guy, but he's that guy. He's voicing what the audience is thinking. He's there to sort of say, this is ridiculous. There can't be mummies on the loose. They don't exist. So that's his role. And I think he plays the part perfectly well. I do like him a great deal.
Yeah, same. And then we've got George Pastel as Mehmet.
Ah, yes.
This guy, Kev, he is so good.
He's terrific, isn't he? Incredibly sinister. He was... For old George Pastel, he kind of drew the historical short straw, really, that he was always playing people that from ethnic groupings he didn't belong to.
Because he's actually Cypriot.
He's Cypriot. Yeah. Jimmy Sangster remembered that he wasn't Indian, Egyptian or French, but he always looked exactly right. He'll turn up again. Well, actually, before I do that bit, because this is important, let's address the character's name. In the credits of the film, at the end, he's Mehmet Bey.
Right.
He introduces himself to Banning as Mehmet Akhir. And never once does anybody mention him as being Mehmet Bey, as far as I can remember.
And what's also weird is because I looked this up when I was doing the cast list on IMDb, and it's credited as Bey Mehmet.
It's weird, isn't it? But the credits definitely say Mehmet Bey. But it's just, I think some people have said that when he introduced himself as Mehmet Akhir, he's using a pseudonym. But the question then arises, they don't know he's called Mehmet Bey because no one's bothered to ask him, so why is he using a pseudonym? It doesn't make any sense.
And also, if you're doing a pseudonym, wouldn't you change your first name as well?
You'd go from Mehmet Bey to Kevin Lyons, wouldn't you? Something nondescript and boring, you wouldn't stick with something too similar. But it's, I think there's just some sort of disconnect between the script and the credits.
Yeah.
Whether it was kind of a late in the day change, because Bey is the name of one of the characters in the Universal films.
Ah.
So I wonder if maybe late in the day they suddenly remembered we can call him Mehmet Bey, and so took out as many references to Mehmet Akhir as they possibly could, credited him as that, hoped that no one would notice, and here we are all these decades later. Sort of, hang on a minute, Hammer. Something's gone a bit awry there.
They're like, it's fine. Everyone's going to watch it once at the cinema and then forget about it. We'll make our money.
Exactly.
It will be good. And here's us in 2025 dissecting it with a fine-tooth comb.
And by the time this turns up on telly, we'll have made a sequel, so don't worry about it. Just move on. And talking of that sequel, George Pastel does turn up again in The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb in 1964, playing Hashmi Bey. Not Hash eBay, Hashmi Bey, who may or may not be the same person, who knows? I mean, the way they messed his name about, he may be the same person, it's difficult to tell. But I think he's really good in this, isn't he?
He is good. He's
really creepy and sinister when he's doing all the invocations and things too. Although it has to be said that he's doing these invocations to the great god Karnak. Karnak was a city, not a god. And Jimmy Sangster did actually admit that he thought that, well, if there was a temple of Karnak...
Yeah, I've heard of... Wasn't that one of the 7 wonders of the world, Temple of Karnak?
I think it may have been. It's a very famous thing, certainly. But I think he thought Temple of Karnak, that must be a temple to Karnak. It's not. It's a temple in Karnak.
I love that.
And so he misunderstood it and called the great god Karnak. Doesn't matter, makes no difference whatsoever. That's something only nerds like me can love. But, it's amusing. It's amusing. But he's doing these fantastic invocations, and you get those wonderful scenes I mentioned earlier of him standing next to Christopher Lee. And George Pastel seems to be quite a short guy. And then he's standing next to this towering figure of Caris. And it really enhances the sort of the feeling of this monster being really physical and really huge, but also how the power balance is working in this relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
That you've got this huge monster and this tiny little human guy, and he's the one in charge. He's the one calling the shots. Right. And it's really, really, really effective. And I do like George Pastel. He will play a few more of these kind of roles as we go along, but I think, we can forgive him for the sort of ethnically unaware casting for these things, because he was just so good in these roles.
He's really good, and also looks great in a fez.
The only other person to rock a fez as good as him, and I'm going back to him again, of course I'm going to say him, it was the Doctor in Doctor Who. There you go, that's my second mention. I'm moving on. Right.
Well, before we do move on, all of this stuff about about his name.
Yes.
And I can't move on without my favourite Austin Powers quote of all time and one of the greatest gags ever written, which is, I don't recognise the name, but your fez is familiar.
Oh, yes. As a real grown-up, but I can't help belly laughing when I hear it.
Because it's so good. I can't see a man in a fez and not think about Austin Powers.
And not think of that line, your fez is familiar.
And also, talking about more modern examples of actors being browned up, I'm pretty sure that Will Ferrell is browned up in that film as well. So,
indeed, and of course,
it's not something that started and stopped with Hammer.
Oh no, and we get Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder, although that's done as a joke, and he's kind of an integral part of the plot. But and he's kind of in a way acceptable because it's satirising.
Yes.
The practice, but yes, it still goes on to this very day. It still goes on. It's shameful, but it still goes on. And I have no time for it when it happens today. I'll make allowances in the past, but not today. Absolutely, we do better than that.
Completely.
What we can't do better today, of course, is the rest of the supporting cast, because oh my God, look who we've got here!
Come on,
Michael Ripper.
Yes,
Michael Ripper's back as a poacher. We haven't seen him for a couple of weeks, but here he is. And we have some other Hammer faces that we're going to get to know really well. George Woodbridge. We've seen him before. He plays PC Blake, Harold Goodwin as Pat, and Dennis Shaw as Mike. These guys, they were all part of like an unofficial Hammer stock company, and it becomes a really lovely little game when you're not looking for the Cushing finger. We've seen plenty that I just haven't mentioned yet, but we are going to play that game of spot the Hammer face. You'll be doing this a lot as we go through this series. There's so many of these wonderful little character actors turning up for 5 minutes, maybe a morning's work.
Yeah.
And just being brilliant, stealing the show sometimes.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Did you say it was Pat and Mike?
Pat and Mike, yes.
Pat and Mike. Are they the like delivery men?
That's right. Yeah. The very inept delivery men,
AKA my two favourite characters in the entire film. I think they are so good.
They're so good because they're so bloody useless. They're kind of these drunken bums who are sort of paid to deliver this box, and he's just like, oh, it falls in the bog. Never mind. Let's go down the pub. They are wonderful,
and it's another example of like a pub in a Hammer film where you get two, usually men, not always, but usually men. Pour one out for Rosie, who are sitting there having a conversation, both doing fantastic, like sloshed, drunk acting.
Yes, a little worse for wear.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. And this is such a good example of that. I love those two. And when we come on...
It wouldn't be a Hammer film without a pub. We love pub scenes.
We love them so much. And when we come on to talk about our favourite moments... I will be coming back to these, gents.
Oh, I think I know what your favourite moment's going to be. Yes, I think I know what's coming.
So I think we've slightly sort of skirted around this already, Kev, but this idea of sort of raiding ancient tombs, disturbing the dead... this idea of kind of colonialism and going into these sacred sites and taking away these artifacts and bringing, like with the Tutankhamun stuff, like touring the world with it, bringing it back to the British Museum. We're talking the Elgin marbles, all of this stuff.
Indeed.
Do you think that the film and the script is commenting on any of that? Is it kind of effectively portraying like an anti-colonialism theme or a kind of a distaste for the practice of tomb raiding and stuff? Like, where do you think it sort of lies between as we were discussing last week with Hound of the Baskervilles, the kind of entertainment to intellectual?
Sure.
Where does it sort of lie on that spectrum?
Well, I said then that Hammer were very good at being able to put a message into their films without offending anybody, because if you didn't want to see it, you wouldn't notice it. If you do want to see it, it's there and it's fairly obvious. There's a great line from Joseph to Bey Akri, whatever he's called. When they first meet in Egypt, Bey says to him, it's something along the lines of, you can't be disturbing the dead, you can't be desecrating their tombs and taking away our treasures. And I think it's very telling that the reply he gets is, kindly mind your own business.
Yeah.
As if this isn't his business.
Yeah.
He's a priest. This is his business. It's his business to look after his country's heritage and all the rest of it. And this, I think, is a very subtle dig at the fact that you've got these people, mostly amateur scientists. I think you'd mentioned that. They were kind of a hobby to these people. They were amateurs going over there, digging things up. Yes, OK, they did uncover the Sphinx, which had been lost for years, but that's no excuse for some of the stuff that's happened.
Quite right, yeah.
And it does, the whole fact that Caris is being used to take revenge on the people who desecrated the tomb. It's not for personal gain. Bay isn't trying to make money out of this or power or anything. He's doing it because these interlopers come along and desecrated the tomb of an anchor. And so this is kind of the ultimate sort of fantasy, as it were, I'm sure, of a lot of the people who were living in these countries at the time, of being able to strike back at these first world powers that were coming over and strip mining their countries, basically, of all their assets.
Yeah.
There's a huge part of me, I have to say, that it won't sound good. I know this isn't going to paint me in a better light. In some ways, there's a part of me that thinks, actually, I'm glad they did, because then I got to see them.
Yeah.
Which is very, very, very selfish of me. Incredibly. And nowadays, I think, well, I've seen them, let's give them back.
Right.
Which is incredibly selfish as well, because what about all the other people that might want to see them? But air travel now is so cheap and easy. Go and see them in Egypt. Go and see them in situ. Go and see the Elgin marbles in Greece, where they belong. Sorry, getting all political now, and I probably shouldn't. But, that part of me that thinks I was so pleased to have seen Tutankhamun. But, I would much rather perhaps have seen Tutankhamun at a museum near where they discovered the remains. So it stayed there. So I think that is questioned in the film, but subtly.
Yeah, it is subtle. It is.
It's not... Again, they weren't trying to sell you anything with this film. They were making a point. They made the point briefly and subtly, and it's there if you want to see it. I like seeing those things, so I'm happy to have spotted it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, me too. So let's talk a little bit about the sort of sets and the costumes. I thought, Kev, and I'm really interested to hear what you think about this, but I thought it all looked a little bit cheap. And that isn't something that I've experienced so far in the other films that we've talked about, the colour Hammer horrors, that do have this sort of sumptuousness that we've discussed so many times. The costumes are always beautiful.
Sure.
The sets always look good. Even if it's kind of outdoor settings that they've built at Bray, or the kind of more location stuff, the B-roll that they were shooting in the Alps or on Dartmoor.
Sure.
This, to me, all looked a little bit ropey, I thought, and I wonder what you thought of
Well, it's interesting. I saw this in your notes when you sent them to me, and I thought, is she right? And I checked, and the budget, depending on which source you believe, and of course getting budgets for films is really difficult, because a lot of the time the producers didn't want you to know how much they spent on a film.
Sure.
Often they would lie about it. Yes, we spent $1 million. No, you didn't. You spent 30p in a book of Green Shield stamps. It's not, it's obvious it's dirt
Oh my
cheap.
God, I haven't heard Green Shield stamps mentioned in a while, Kev.
That's how old I am. So those younger people,
I
go
love
and look
it.
them up, and you'll find out some very interesting history. You have used the shop that Green Shield stamps came from, I'm sure, on more than one occasion. You'll find out. Go and look it up. But anyway, the budget has been reported for The Mummy as being either £100,000 or £120,000. To put that in context, the budget for Curse of Frankenstein was £65,000.
What?
And Dracula was £81,000.
I mean, I know that in Curse of Frankenstein they were 100% using Christmas lights in his lab, but come on!
Yeah, I think what you're seeing isn't so much cheapness as ambition getting the better of Hammer.
Okay.
I think they thought, we've got a ton of money, we can really go to town here. We can really go for this. And they tried very hard to go to town with it. They recreated ancient Egypt at Bray Studios, which is no mean feat in itself.
No.
I just wonder if perhaps they were aiming a little bit higher than even the increased budget would allow.
Yeah, maybe.
And so sometimes it falls a little short. Trust me, and you'll be the same, we have seen far worse mummy films, far more under-resourced mummy films than this. But, yeah, I mean, it doesn't strike me as being quite as colourful as some of the earlier films, quite as... difficult to describe it, but it doesn't bother me too much, I have to say. It doesn't bother me too much. I think if you're in ancient Egypt, you've got to expect it to be a little bit drab because it's all sand, and so maybe it's kind of... I don't know. I might have to disagree with you.
I'm being very grumpy.
You are being grumpy today. What's the matter with you?
I know, I'm sorry. I just genuinely, Kev, talking about Dracula, for example, when we talked about the sort of outdoor set of the castle, of Dracula's castle, you've got that incredible sort of matte painting in the background, which gives you, that look out to the mountains.
That's right, yeah.
You've got the castle that's built in the foreground. We were talking about, it's actually such a shame that we don't know the names of, the carpenters and the workmen who were sort of creating this stuff. You've got the river kind of splashing down sort of under the bridge and stuff. I was there, right. I was in the Carpathians or wherever you're supposed to be. And with this, it looked like they had built an Egypt set at a studio. And fine, it's 1959.
Which is exactly what they did, of course. Yeah.
I'm not expecting them to go and shoot on location in Egypt.
Sure.
But even the costumes, in the flashbacks, you're getting sort of close-ups of... Callie, Christopher Lee as Callie. His makeup looks a bit iffy. His costume looks like it's just been bought from, I don't know, Smithy's fancy dress. I was just like, I don't like it. Where's all my believable, gorgeous sumptuousness that I have come to know and love?
Well, it's funny, now that you mention it, now that I'm thinking about the modern day scenes in air quotes, they are quite conservatively dressed. Mm-hmm. They're quite boring. Even Isabel.
You think about the dress that I wish I could remember her name, but she's sort of the countess who comes to work as the nurse in Revenge of Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
Her hair, her makeup, her costuming was stunning. And then you sort of look at this a few years later and you think, oh no, what happened?
You're beginning to win me over a little bit with that.
Oh no!
So maybe that budget I saw was actually £10,000 to £12,000 and not £220,000. But no, I think you're right in that sense. I think the sets look okay. Mm-hmm. The sets always looks pretty magnificent. If you're ever in Perth in Scotland, go along to the museum and art gallery there and you will see the fiberglass sarcophagus used in this film. I think sometimes it's taken off display, but I'm reliably informed that if you ask nicely, they will let you see it.
I must say, Kev, you mentioning the sarcophagus, there is the moment where Caris lets himself back into the tomb after the Princess Ananka has been embalmed and buried, and he's obviously going in to try and bring her back to life.
Yeah.
And he opens the sarcophagus, and this is the moment that really did strike me as looking incredible. The sarcophagus, the detail on it is beautiful. And because it's like she is mummified and her kind of costume almost looks like a sarcophagus itself, but you can see that it's the actress's actual face, and the makeup and stuff is so good. And I looked at that and I was like, right, now we're talking. This looks amazing. So if they were going to keep any of it up at a museum or something, it makes sense that it was that, because I think it is beautiful.
That would be the prop, yeah. Just a gorgeous prop, isn't it? He said, one day I will make that pilgrimage up to Perth in Scotland to see that, because I think that would be something worth being able to say I was in the same room as.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll add it to our field trip list, our Hammer Time field trip list.
I think we should set up Hammer Time tours where we can actually start taking tour parties around the country in a coach, visiting all these wonderful places. There you go.
Can it be horse-drawn?
Ah, yes, please. Knowing us is going to end up as Carry On Abroad, isn't it? But
oh my God.
We can
with Nail and I.
Or with Nail and I. We've gone on holiday by mistake. Yeah.
Exactly.
Terrific.
Before we move on from the sort of the sets and the sort of cinematography and stuff, I thought the lighting was excellent. There are a couple of moments when the sort of tomb will be opened, and the mummy is kind of going about his business. Yeah. And there is some incredible lighting that really gives it that kind of mystical, kind of supernatural, like, I don't know, it looked really good.
And there's a wonderful bit as well where they go in the other flashback. There are far too many flashbacks in this film, but there's a second flashback when they go back and they actually go into the tomb itself, and it's sort of lit by this unearthly green glow.
Yes.
Which is highly impossible. Where the hell is that glow coming from?
Doesn't matter.
It works.
I
think it works really well. It shouldn't make any sense, and it doesn't, but it's still, green signifies monsters, as they once said about that television programme I promise not to talk about again. But green is a signifier of monsters and evil and nastiness and all the rest of it. So it works beautifully. It's almost like... the fans are going to hate me for this, but I wonder if Mario Bava sat down and watched this film one day and thought, look at what they're doing with the lighting schemes here.
Yeah. Well, because...
I like that.
Because there's another moment, which I loved, where they are... you've got the police constable, who you mentioned earlier... And Pat and Mike are down trying, they're sort of going through the swamp, trying to find the box after it's fallen off.
That's right, yeah.
And it's like sunrise, and the lighting is beautiful because the surface of the swamp is blood red.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Yes.
It looks so good. And again, green signifies monsters. Red is obviously like blood and danger and horror. Yeah. We're so used to seeing red in Hammer films, through Kensington Gore. Or we were talking last week about those incredible hunting coats of the nasty rich men at the beginning. And so, I don't know, like they were doing... Whoever was on lighting for this film was having a really good week.
Well, this is Jack Asher again, who was...
it is.
It was one of Hammer's most valuable players.
Oh, honestly,
he made these films look so much better than... you can look at other... by the time they made this film, British horror has kicked off a little bit. We're starting to see British horror films being made. Some of them are good, some of them are not. None of them look as good as a Hammer film. Because they had Bernard Robinson on set, so they had Jack Asher on cinematography, and they had several people doing costumes. And that's why they look so good. Even this one, I'm still going to argue, actually, that, yes, OK, there are flaws here, but I still think if you compare it to what else was going on at the time, it still looks pretty impressive.
Fair enough. And like I say, that lighting really did stand out to me. I thought it was really very cool. Yes. Even the inexplicable green stuff, I was like, yes, I love it.
Yes. And you think about the inexplicable green stuff on the bus ride home. You don't think about it while you're watching the film.
Yeah. It
just seems perfectly natural.
Yeah, that's right. And then you think,
why would there not be? Why would there not? Yeah, then going home afterwards, you've had a few pints in the pub with your mates afterwards, you sit on the bus, you go, hang on, what was all that about?
Okay. Please, can I talk about my favourite moment from the film?
I'm afraid we haven't got time. We've only got time for me to talk incessantly for the next 10 minutes, so no, shut up.
But it's the funniest joke I've ever heard.
Go on then, if you must.
Well, actually, it's not quite as funny as... I don't recognise the name, but your Fez is familiar. But it's a very close second. There is a bit with Mike and Pat who are getting drunk in the pub.
Yes.
And then they come out because they realise, we haven't got time for another one. We've got to get this box delivered. And so they weave out of the pub, pour themselves out of it.
Yeah.
And one of them says to the other, I'll drive. You're too drunk.
Yeah.
And he says, no, I'm driving. It's my horse. A horse is man's best friend. And then the other one says, that's a dog. And he says, no, it's not. It's a horse. I'm not that drunk.
It's a lovely bit of character moments, isn't it? It's so funny. And it's beautifully played. And Hammer were good at that, getting those little comedy moments in without overpowering the rest of the film. It is terrific. It's very funny. And those two guys, they were a double act who really should have come back in more Hammer films.
I would have loved like little cameos from them throughout the series. I really would.
Just turning up, still drunk, still arguing over whether it's a dog or a horse.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be really good. I love that. So again, all you fan fiction writers out there, get on it. Let's put Pat and Mike in arguing about whether it's a cat or a dog who's man's best friend. It is a lovely moment. You're absolutely right.
funny. I just thought it was hilarious.
It's great.
Such a good gag. How about you, Kev? Come on, tell me about your favourite moments.
Favourite bits? The mummy bursting through the windows. I used to have a recurring nightmare as a child of something coming through my bedroom windows. And I've often wondered, did I see a scene from The Mummy long before I was supposed to have seen it? And it was that scene, and it frightened me so much that I kind of blanked out that.
Subconscious,
but it was there in my mind, of this thing that didn't have much of a face coming in through the windows. So, that scene in particular does give me a bit of a shudder.
Yeah, it's good.
I think we've talked about these moments before. The climax as he sinks below the surface of the swamp, when we first see him coming out of the swamp. And at the end of the swamp, at the end of the film, when he goes into the swamp, it allows me to somewhat labour the Terminator metaphor a little bit more, because he's only a thumbs up away from anticipating the ending of Terminator 2. So,
I'd have loved it if the mummy went down and just did a little thumbs up before his hand disappeared.
Look after her, mate. She's my reincarnation of my lost love. Look after her, and then goes under the waves.
Or like flips the V sign,
Oh, we are going to get a moment of that in a later Hammer film, and you are going to hear me rant like you've never heard me rant before.
Okay.
So brace yourself for that one. That's coming in several months' time. You've got time to brace yourself.
Ooh,
Ample
little
bracing
teaser
time.
There. How exciting.
Little teaser. Hammer fans know exactly what I'm talking about. And they're probably thinking the same thing. Bloody rubbish. But
so how did this one do commercially? I think we've decided to stop talking about the critics, because who cares what
who
they
cares
think?
about their critic?
What did the audience think?
They loved it. It was another huge success. Distributed in the States by Universal, here by Rank. In its first 4 days of release, it took more money than any of their other releases that year.
What?
In the first 4 days. I mean, we are talking proper blockbuster stuff here. And I think it's easy to forget that these films were blockbusters. These were the equivalents of the summer blockbusters back then. People were forming queues around the block to see these films. They were huge hits. It took even more than Dracula, because by now they were a brand. People knew that if
you've got the momentum,
if they saw those words, a Hammer film production. I think Martin Scorsese has said this. I don't think this is my words. That a Hammer film production meant you were in for something special. And Marty is a big fan of Hammer. He adores Hammer films, which is another reason to love him even more than he did. And Hammer was so good at advertising these films. They really went to town. If you watch the British monster movie Gorgo, which is very good, I really like it. It's a really good giant monster film. You'll see Gorgo, the monster, being transported unconscious around Piccadilly Circus on a television, and there in the background is this huge advertising hoarding for The Mummy.
Wow.
And you get some idea of just how much money they spend on advertising these films. And that's why they were so successful. They were making good quality films, really promoting them, getting bums on seats, and this was going to continue for at least another decade. There's a little bit of a wobble around the end of the 60s, early 70s, but then into the 70s they pick up again. They're just making these amazing films that people wanted to see. Just amazing. So yes, this was hugely successful. Hugely successful.
Great. I love it. I love that we're sort of getting to that point now, where, you sort of got the beginning part of our sort of journey, our rewatch where Hammer were very established as a film company, but then you know, they're sort of dipping their toe into sci-fi and horror and genre pictures. Then you get the stuff where they're really sort of starting to find their feet and move into the gothics, and now obviously we're getting to that point where their successes are really starting to pay off and they're sort of getting that momentum behind them. I love it.
What we're going to see as well is they've got the momentum going, but yes, they're a money-making concern. Of course they are, but they don't rest on their laurels for a long while. Mm-hmm. They're constantly experimenting and trying different things out, as we'll see as we go along. I think, you know, by the end of the 70s, we'll discuss that problem when we get to it. There's a slight change, but they pull it back, thanks to Michael Carreras. And they just kept on constantly trying something new. It would have been so easy just to make endless Dracula sequels.
Yeah, like you say, rest on your laurels.
Exactly, they didn't. They kept trying, what can we do this week that's a bit different? I think possibly because the people involved in it would have got bored doing that.
Yeah.
They're very creative people. Why do we want to keep making the same old thing? Let's try this instead. And at the same time that they're making these films, let's not forget they're making war films, comedies, Cash on Demand will be coming up in a few weeks. So, you know, these films are all... They're trying so many different things. It's not just the horror films. They were such a creative company.
Yeah. And, you know, it's something... It's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to keep talking about them, because it's not just... Here's another Dracula. Here's another Frankenstein.
Not at all.
Here's another mummy. Like, I can't wait, for example, till we get to the black and white thrillers that, you know, you were talking about earlier with Jim Sangster writing them, and, you know, like there's still so much to come, and it's not even just, well, we've done vampires, mummies, and, you know, Frankenstein monsters, so now let's do werewolves, now let's do, you know, XYZ. It's like, no, they then do zombies, but it's one of my favourite zombie films. They then do werewolves, it's one of my favourite werewolf films. Like, I'm so excited, Kev. We've got so much incredible stuff coming up.
Honestly, I said this last week, I think, or the week before, and I apologise, but I can't help it. There's so much hyperbole coming from me over the next few weeks and months. I'm going to run out of ways to say this is just bloody brilliant. I don't know how I'm going to be able to keep up with that creatively, thinking that. But, you know, you're seeing these films sometimes for the first time. You know that's the only way we can describe these films.
Absolutely.
They are bloody brilliance. They're amazing.
Absolutely. But we do have to now...
here comes the but.
I know.
Oh,
it was inevitable. We do now have to come on to rank The Mummy amongst the other Hammer films that we've seen so far. I'm going to go first to get it out.
When you say ranking, is this rank stupidity, or are you going to impress me?
Very funny. I really didn't like this film, and I had seen it before, and I think I liked it even less on second watch. And I'm really sorry, but for me, this is... I think I'm going to have to put it in lower, upper lower. But
come on, justify yourself.
Well, it's just, you know, it's like we've said before, it's lower amongst all the ones that we've just watched. It doesn't mean that it's going to be at the bottom of my list by the time we get to the end of 63 films.
Of course. Absolutely.
But all at the moment, it is by far my least favourite of all the ones we've watched.
Fair enough.
I'm sorry, The Mummy.
All I will say is the good people of the Hammer lovers on Facebook take pity on the poor girl. She knows not what she does. This moment was inevitable. We were talking about this right from the start, and I did say, didn't I, off camera at the beginning, that I was sort of making bets with myself as to which film we'd depart ways on. I wasn't expecting The Mummy.
Well, I mean, you sort of said that it was The Abominable Snowman, but then what you managed to do was really kind of convince me by the end of it that it's a much better film than I thought it was. And not to underplay your powers, but I have not been convinced during this chat that this is better than I thought it was.
I'm sorry, Mummy, I failed you. Hang on a minute, that sounds wrong.
That's something else.
That's a very disturbing peek into my life, isn't it? But I'm going to counter that. By putting it in upper. It's not elite, because I think it has some structural problems. That first flashback goes on too long, and I'm not sure why we have the second flashback. Just put it at the beginning of the film. So there are some structural issues. But it has Christopher Lee as an unstoppable killing machine. It has Peter Cushing not quite being at full strength, but it's still Peter Cushing. It's got Michael Ripper. It's got Monster. It's got everything I want from a Hammer film. So for me, it's still very much upper.
Upper. Okay. Well, if you'll let me back next week.
I'm looking for a new partner already, so if there's anybody out there who likes to audition, now is a good time. Of course you can come back.
Oh, thanks, Kev.
If you say good things about the films that I'm going to hate in the late 60s, early 70s, then there will be trouble and I will be questioning your mental reasoning. So.
Well, I mean, there are many reasons to question my mental reasoning, Kev, but we'll see if that's one of them.
We'll see if that, yeah. Okay, we can part as friends. We can part as friends.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Hammer Time. We'll be back next week with the last of 1959's Hammer horror films, The Man Who Could Cheat Death. I know nothing about this one, but it sounds great. To check out the full list of movies we'll be covering throughout this podcast, head to evolutionofhorror.com/hammer. We'd love to hear from you, and we do have a mailbag episode coming up very soon. So please send us questions or comments for that upcoming episode. You can drop us an email to hammer@evolutionofhorror.com. You can follow the Evolution of Horror Network on Instagram at @EOH_network. You can follow me on Instagram and Blue Sky @BunnyDarke. And Kev, what about you?
EOFF-TV. That's the name of my website, EOFF-TV.com. EOFF-TV Review is the review site. And I'm on all sorts of social media, Twitter, Facebook, Blue Sky, Instagram, either as me, Kevin Lyons, or mostly as EOFF-TV. Come along, say hello. And I will try to get back to you. I'm very lax. I'm an old man with social media. We shouldn't be allowed anywhere near it. But, so I'll get there eventually.
Come and say hello. It doesn't matter.
Yes, exactly.
Don't forget to rate and review us as well on your podcast app of choice. Thank you for listening. Join us next week for another episode of Hammer Time.